Well, hello and welcome to the Power Couple podcast. Happy 2026, everyone. We are honored to have Nikko Kennedy on our show of Brighter Days and Darker Nights. We've been trying to connect for a while, and it was for good reason that we didn't connect because Nikko is very busy with her family and bringing on new family members. Uh, so we're honored to have her here today. We're going to have a discussion on all things circadian rhythm, hormones, and what we can do to optimize our environment and our health in 2026 today. Nikko Kennedy is a director of research at the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology and the creator of the best-selling Substack publication Brighter Days, Darker Nights. With many certifications and trainings over 2 decades studying birth and 15 years as a doula, she helps families and practitioners integrate the emerging field of quantum biology into home and work. Nikko lives in Southern Oregon with her husband and their 5 children. Her website is nikkokennedy.com. And you can see that Nikko is in Oregon right now because it's misty and but still green where she's recording, and she's recording outside, which is amazing. I always love that. Um, and yeah, so thank you so much, Nikko, for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. I love what you share with all of the work you do at the Power Couple. I've been following what you're writing about and doing a great job with educating people about all of the invisible frequencies, visible and invisible frequencies that are surrounding all of us. So I'm really excited to see where this conversation goes. And I'm really glad that we finally have found a time that works for all of us to sit down and connect. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. The pleasure is all ours. And I got to say, what really attracted me to your site the first time was the play on words, right? Brighter days, darker nights. So of course I clicked on the icon to see who it is. Just like, oh, that's such a cool name, right? Like, it's the whole power on, power off thing. I'm like, oh, and at first I'm like, oh, I should have taken that name. I should have created that. That was a really creative thing. Like, no, no, that's okay. But I love it
Yep.
because it's such a
It's
simple
great.
formula.
Exactly. It's just kind of the beginning of it all. And that's what I figured. My husband, actually, he's the clever one. So he helped me come up with that name. And we like it because, yeah, even if you never dive in to look any more into my work, Brighter Days, Darker Nights is the simplest thing that all of us could do to improve the health of our circadian rhythms. So it is just a kind of slogan catchphrase, a bit long, but yes, my Substack is at www.brighterdaysdarkernights.com. And I'm also on Instagram with that handle. And everyone else is welcome to, obviously, there's no proprietary to the method of Brighter Days, Darker Nights. That's universal. Welcome to all. So.
Oh, that's fabulous. Well, I think this is a good launching point for us to ask you how you got into this whole idea of brighter days and darker nights. I mean, what was the catalyst? Or
Yeah.
did you just grow up in this kind of environment all your life?
Oh, yeah, wouldn't that be nice? I'm working towards the future where all children, all babies, from in utero forward are brought up in this way. Historically, we didn't even have to think about circadian rhythms because we naturally were in tune with our environments. But, nature can be unpredictable and uncomfortable. So as humans, we've naturally kind of collected various layers of technology to insulate ourselves from experiencing the cold of night, the heat of the summer day, insulated, right? We don't want to step on stones that will hurt our feet. All of these ways that we, over time, across thousands of years, have become more and more insulated. But now we live in a way that is, probably like peak insulation from the natural environment, and that has had some severe consequences. Circadian disruption is associated with pretty much every major chronic health condition that we are now facing. So working to restore circadian rhythms, my entry to it was wanting to help the babies, help mamas and babies to birth well. And so I found out it was, related to the chronic health conditions and no one was talking about it. Then I realized it was also influencing burnout rates for, birth workers because they're experiencing massive circadian disruption by way of the lifestyle. And then I realized, I just kept going further and further and realized it's also influencing the play of hormones in labor, and like that it's also not just the health of the pregnancy, but also what goes down in that acute moment of the birth suite. So I started teaching and sharing, and from there, it just has really now starting to take off, that I'm supporting and understanding not just my field of birth, but also all the different fields of chronic health conditions, and also people who just want to like live optimally. I get a lot of those. So yeah, it's really just kind of been this dawning understanding that has grown step by step. There's, of course, been a personal healing journey. My immune system was super dysregulated because I went through, when I was going through school and all of my education and training, it was in the stage where everything was moving online. So I was working East Coast from Pacific in a virtual job, taking online classes, working, just being on computers for probably over 12 hours a day during that really acute training stage of my life. And it was miserable seasonal allergies, allergic contact dermatitis, like all kinds of awful symptoms that I started doing circadian health. I didn't even know it was going to help with all of that. But my husband I'm going to talk about him a lot because he's really, the wind behind my sails in all of this. And he put Flux software on my computer. So it would naturally start dimming the screen. So when I would be up in the morning before sunrise, it would naturally have the amber screen. And then in the nighttime, after sunset, it would also start dimming and turning down to amber and then red. And I noticed that I stopped being able to work deep into the night. And I realized that I was actually like addicted to that work cycle, all of that blue light and everything. I was really just running on cortisol and adrenaline all the time, being such a like type, just like that high achieving. I really wanted to make a difference. I really was just working so hard. And then circadian health kind of allowed me to step back and break the addiction cycle with achievement and my computer and all of that, and really to figure out what I actually wanted to do. And I ended up deciding to go into entrepreneurship where I could control my own schedule, because it was just such a huge, like that day and night, that stark contrast between what it's like when you're just running on overload versus actually having time to breathe and take care of yourself. So my symptoms faded into the night, and it was afterwards that I even looked back and I was like, hell, that was a mild allergy year. Like, oh, it's been like 2 years since I had an allergic contact dermatitis outbreak. Like, like in hindsight, I look back, it's like, oh, my health has drastically improved in ways I didn't expect, because we were just trying this health fad where he's like, here, I'm going to put this software on your computer. And then everything changed for us.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, the perspective is everything too, because, I'm still not perfect. I will have a lot of screen time even after sunset, even though I tell other people not to do it. Right. But I have the dimming technology, but still, I mean, I know I can do things a lot better, but when I look back at how I really was, and I think that's, we always have to appreciate where we are and how far we've come, right? Because we always want to get better, but having that perspective is everything. I mean, I used to be up all hours of the night, right, on the screen, and that's why I think, we always try to remind people, subscribers, and I'm sure you've had the experience with clients too, that we all get so overwhelmed, but sometimes, about what we can be doing, but so few times we take the time to appreciate, what we have done, right? So
yeah,
that perspective is great because it's brought you to where you are today, right?
Yeah, just little baby steps all the time, finding little tiny ways to reconnect with nature. So yeah, like that screen technology is now built in. It wasn't then, but a lot of people have night shift where they can just turn it right on their phones, and you still might want some stronger dimming at night, but it is built in. But yeah, it's becoming so much more available and so much more the technology is eventually going to reharmonize. That's one of the big things that I'm often talking about, is that it's not about rejecting technology as a whole. Like, there are some people who might go that route, but for many of us, it's about the innovations where we can make technology work better for us and make our lives, be reintegrating with nature, but in ways that are practical, that help us remain with our creature comforts and able to still do our careers and, all of the things that we want to do. But ideally, our lighting isn't going to be hurting us anymore the way that it has been before we knew, because it's relatively new, the discovery of the circadian rhythm and the non-visual effects of light and EMFs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so to ask you a practical question too, like, because you're in Oregon, and I know
Yeah.
people, subscribers in Oregon, they're not really happy about it. They don't feel great, right? They don't get a lot of sunlight. And,
Mm-hmm.
so what do you do? And do you notice people around you having challenges in that kind of in a darker
Mm-hmm.
environment?
Oh, yeah. I work with people all around the world. So a lot of people who live in Scandinavian countries and Canada actually come to me for support, because it feels, the more further from the equator you are, the more difficult the environment is. And our bodies are so capable of adapting to the light. So you can't really just start in one season. Like, one season leads into the next. So it's really kind of a gradual shift from um, just going with the standard protocol of like artificial light for 16 hours a day that's bright white, and then turn it off, knock out for 8 hours, and then like start the whole cycle over again. With the shift of the seasons, like, we get to about 15 hours of darkness here at peak winter time. And yeah, there's a huge people understanding the idea of SAD, like seasonal affective disorder, and it's been promoted as a deficiency of bright light, but to me, and so they use bright light therapy for it. But the person who kind of started the whole bright light therapy trend, his work also had another side that's not really as well promoted, but it's what are the effects of darkness, and what happens when you're in extended dark. So when you do start changing and actually having sufficient darkness, I find a lot of people reporting that their seasonal affective disorder goes away, because it's the ratio of natural light to artificial light. And so people who live in northern climates are having artificial light that is driving their cortisol super, super high, and they're not getting the rest and restoration. So when we dim lights in the evening, as we've been talking about, then we actually get more healing. And we get more sleep, and we get more rest. And then the mental health doesn't suffer so terribly. And then the other side of it is that bipolar also comes up in the springtime when the light starts coming back. And that's another side that people also don't really think about. We think of seasonal affective disorder as like the depression side of it, but we don't also recognize the manic side of it that causes quite a bit of chaos as well, from, again, not having adequate darkness and other circadian rhythm cues we could talk about. But yeah, welcoming darkness again is a really big part. That's why I use brighter days, darker nights. There's a lot of people that are like bright light wellness, sunshine wellness, and that's great. It is a huge important thing, because many people aren't getting outside enough in the day. We do need a lot more lux during the daytime. But I really wanted to put both, especially for living in a somewhat northern climate, that both are really important to bring back.
And that reminds me of something that Bodana once said. She had a great insight, and it was about sleep and letting go of control. That ultimately, from the emotional aspect, I mean, I know we talk about a lot of quantum biological and aspects, but from the emotional, psychological aspect, embracing that darkness, it's
Mm-hmm.
like people, it's we have a hard time embracing our fear or dealing with our fear. And Bodana
Yeah.
once said that, when you go to sleep, a lot of people, it's the people have the hardest time letting go of control, with neuroses and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it more difficult to fall asleep, right? So,
It does.
So I love the whole concept of, going into the basement and embracing that darkness to then
Hmm.
find more light. I think it's a counterintuitive way of thinking about it, right? And
Hmm.
it's not as quote unquote positive or popular as get
Hmm.
outside, but it's
Yeah.
still the other side of the coin.
Yes, it happens in the birth suite too. I wrote about birth recently and saying that in many cases, for physiological birth to unfold is a lot more like falling asleep because it is driven by the subconscious and is really facilitated by darkness.
Mm.
And that's one of the challenges that a lot of women face when they leave home to go and birth in an institution that has all of these crazy bright lights that flip the cortisol switch. So not only the family that's going through the labor portal, but also all of the staff have this cortisol switch. So everyone is feeling more like watch the clock, metrics, daytime checking, like that just kind of feeling of stress by having cortisol running at the wrong time of day.
Mm.
Whereas in a physiological birth sense, usually lights are very, very dim. Women will be like, burying their head to make themselves a little cave because the darkness is also privacy. So yeah, it's the falling asleep every single night is one of the best practices actually for women who are preparing for childbirth and need to be able to let go and surrender to their body doing this thing that is kind of like that falling is like that feeling of falling asleep when you're going through that roller coaster. Some people startle awake and other people just drop right in, and childbirth is actually very similar.
Hmm. Oh, that's incredible. And is it true that, I mean, traditionally, physiologically, women do give, and mammals in
Mm-hmm.
general do give birth at night? Is that
Labor onset at night is
labor
most
onset?
common. Labor onset. So it can take a
Hmm.
different amount of time for baby to travel through the birth canal. So babies can be born at any time of day, but it's most common for labor onset to happen with peak melatonin, and then inverse for nocturnal species
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes
because
sense.
it's
I
their
was
safe
born at
time,
2:30 in the morning.
Hmm.
right? Yeah, that's peak
Interesting.
melatonin. Melatonin and oxytocin are synergistic in the
Wow.
uterine tissues. Yeah.
See, isn't that
Hmm.
beautiful? Like that's in talking about all this and like you mentioned about the sleep and the darker nights and that
Hmm.
we do forget about that connection that our ancestors had to those darker nights. I mean,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
peace that it brings, yes, some fear, depending
Hmm.
on where you were and what time in history, I suppose,
Yeah.
but now and it took some time for me to get used to, and that was part of my healing journey, especially with the insomnia, and resetting my circadian rhythm. But my goodness, I embrace it now so much because it just innately feels so right to have that,
Hmm.
just like our ancestors would have been by the fire or the candlelight, the calm, the soothing, and again, like you said, the surrender. And so,
Hmm.
in connection with birth as well.
Hmm.
Yes,
Hmm.
I mean, sadly, I've never had the experience, but can um, can only imagine that that calm would come also in that same environment. So that's very interesting insight for me.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, all kinds of things. Just like have these connections. Circadian rhythm research has really exploded as a field. So there's, tens of thousands of studies. You can pretty much look up anything that you're interested or noticing happening in your body, whether it's like anything pretty much, and then search that plus circadian rhythm, and you'll in the peer reviewed stuff will just start popping up because it is emerging as one of the things that's been most overlooked in human health with the rise of lighting just going crazy everywhere. Like when then we switched from incandescents to LEDs, the promise was that we were going to have more energy efficiency, but we just used just as much electricity, if not more, because we just added more and more lights. So
Yeah.
it's really been a wild, I sometimes call it like a multi-generational experiment in circadian disruption, massive worldwide.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
people,
uncontrolled, an uncontrolled
Uncontrolled,
experiment.
exactly.
yeah. Yeah. Uncontrolled chaos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or controlled chaos. Um, so what would you tell somebody that gets up in the middle of the night, has a hard time sleeping,
Hmm.
It's like, what are you seeing now? Maybe I should ask,
Hmm.
in people and sleep disruptions and people that you help. What are
Hmm.
some of the main challenges you're coming across?
Yeah, so many sleep challenges, and improved sleep is always one of the very first things that my clients report to me when we start working together. And this is actually a great moment because we're in January here. I'm not sure when this will come out. The replay will be out if you're not in time to catch the live class, but I have two trainings coming up, one for parents and the other for practitioners, that is about sleep and the circadian rhythm, because most modern sleep, like everything, and yeah, so not only sleep but all over the place, when we're looking at the research, they're not controlling for circadian rhythms, and so they're actually telling you that what is normal is actually in a circadian disrupted population. So
Hmm.
there's a bunch of research that's going to need to be redone, but like this idea of eight consolidated sleep hours is what happens when you have 16 hours of artificial light. If you look at non-industrialized people today, or historical records from 300 years ago, before lighting was available the way that it is now, sleep was in many cases polyphasic, and people actually slept less. So there's this idea that humans are diurnal. For the most part, we are, but there's a couple of other terms that I personally believe are a little bit more accurate, which are metaternal or cathemeral. So metaternal is like, that word meta is like above. And it's talking about like that humans, and there are some other species that are like this, we're opportunistic. So we will take whatever opportunities there are for feeding, for socializing, right? Like all of the things that we do, we'll take that anytime, day or night, if it's available to us. And so, especially with the artificial light now, we can make all of that happen anytime, day or night. But even before that, there still was, like during the full moon, we would have a lot more things happening in the middle of the night. You can even look at like birth timing. Babies are more likely to be actually born in the night during the full moon, because there was actually some light to see. It's actually maybe not physiological to have baby born in the dead of night in the new moon. During the new moon, there was slight more tendency for birth to happen in the daytime, where there is a bit more light to be able to see baby and get everything going. And
Hmm.
um,
Wow.
so with regard to sleep, I look at the current standard is monophasic sleep is the best. That's what we're trying to do, is try to get people to lay down, fall asleep for 8 hours, and then wake up in the morning. And most people that sleep that way wake up feeling like crap. And they're like, oh, well, I just needed more sleep. And like the prescription is almost always more sleep. And so what I teach is, through the circadian rhythm, we want to have sleep be restorative regardless of how much time it is. And especially for the moms that I work with, this was a huge shift for me when I understood that polyphasic sleep could be okay, because there's no way for a new mom to
Right.
get 8 hours of sleep. That, like, her baby needs care around the clock. And so I'm like, that is not a mismatch. That is, we're physiologically designed to be able to take care of babies around the clock. What has gone wrong? Well, artificial light is what has really gotten in the way of that. So I teach about all of the cues for the circadian rhythm, whereas most sleep consultants are just using habit and sleep pressure. Sleep pressure being like, how long has it been since you've slept before? Whereas for me, I'm looking at like sleep as an output of the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is programmed by light, it's programmed by temperature, it's programmed by meal cues, it's programmed by our social cues. So we can control all of these other factors that have nothing to do with sleep directly, that will make our sleep be restorative and make us sleep the exact amount of time. So the problem that most people have with waking up is that, historically as well as today, the other thing besides circadian rhythm that can make you wake up in the middle of the night, and if you wake up and you're feeling super stressed out and freaked out and panicked, which is what it is for a lot of people, that's stress and insecurity and not feeling safe. So if you don't feel safe and you're waking up in a panic, that's not circadian polyphasic like I teach. Because what I teach, when you wake up in the middle of the night, you feel calm, you feel reflective, you feel rested, you don't have a headache, your eyes aren't gritty. It is, the French have a term that's dorveilleux, which is like between sleep and awake, right? There's this calm in between state that you can access that used to be a time of meditation, contemplation, prayer, connection between spouses while everyone else is, sleeping through, right? It's a unique, special window that has been lost by the artificial light compressing sleep into 8 hours. So we sleep through that natural waking time. So for those people that are waking up, I find it often relates to not eating enough nutritious food. So their body believes it's starving. And or nervous system trauma responses, sometimes really literally not being safe, depending on where people live and what kind of things. So like those safety signals are really important, as well as the circadian signals. Like it all kind of has to come together. But once it does, then napping is fine. Sleeping in the night is fine. Being awake in the night is fine. Like you have the ability to flow with your natural schedule anytime, day or night, to really access that meternal or ephemeral way of being that is the human superpower that allows us to operate a 24-hour society. So I'd love to see that continue. It's not about turning us into strict rise with the sun, go to sleep at sunset, because that's actually not, I don't think that that's the ideal. I think it's ideal for us to be able to wake up in the night and not have circadian disruption from improper light cues and all of that.
What about waking up in the middle of the night, like, around 2:30 or 3 o'clock? Because wouldn't that be, I agree with you that polyphasic and metaphasic, would be more, adaptable and not to be so strict. But, my concern is, if melatonin peaks, say at 2:30 or 3, and we're waking up then, isn't that detrimental? Or are there certain times that are better to wake up?
Yeah, usually the pattern would be, and this is the problem that most people get into, is they miss. So when you look at the historical records of this, there was first sleep, then there was the watch, and then there was second sleep or morning sleep. So most people are missing first sleep because they don't actually go to bed within a couple hours of sunset. They're usually more like falling asleep at 11 or 12 and then waking up just a couple of hours later. So if you're doing your first sleep as like a nap, that usually would be like from a couple hours after sunset to more like around midnight, then you might wake up. And then you would usually be going back to sleep around that 2 or 3 in the morning time that a lot of people are waking up then, or they also will wake up at like 4 in the morning. There's also the social sleep. So there's the sentinel, I believe it's called the sentinel hypothesis of sleep, which is really that one of the other super unnatural things, or not unnatural, but new things, is that it's become en vogue to have your own bed and have your own home. And before, when you look at like non-industrial, there's a lot of times where you would see that young people would be taking the first watch. We know that young people just naturally want to stay up later and sleep in, whereas older folks tend to want to wake up super early in the day and then they need to fall asleep at night. So if you would think of a multi-generational home, you would see the younger people, right, the teenagers and young adults probably staying up later, and you would have the older folks waking up in that super early morning. So there would always be someone who's somewhat awake around the clock, and that's like watching for predators, that's keeping the fire stoked, that's like all of the, tending to the little babies who are waking up, right? Whereas now it's just us alone in our homes. We don't have that full sentinel thing happening. So, or maybe we have it professionally, like we know we can call the EMTs, right? But they're like, caffeinated and like all of this bright light and like dealing with severe emergencies, and they're not going to like just like be rolling by just to like be making a little bit of noise so that everyone feels safe and knows that there's someone on guard.
That's really interesting. I haven't heard of that before, but it makes complete sense.
Well, we know, we have done it before, because remember in Scouts, we would have those.
Well, yes, scouting, but I guess I never, but you're right. Yes, we would have at camps, you would have the night watch and take 2 hours at a time, which we all, of course, hated. Nobody liked the graveyard shift in the middle of the night.
but it had a primal component of survival encoded there, because this is based on the partisan army and what they used to do. So just like our ancestors, right? Scanning for threats. It was a time where, it was just necessary. So, but it makes sense, and it's fascinating with the different generations, right? Because each generation requires less sleep, some more. and at different times. So it's nature's formula for
Mhm.
homeostasis, I guess, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah, but it's true. So much, and so much of health, and that's what I really love about quantum biology, because a lot of times it's so subtle,
Mm-hmm.
and this is from a socioeconomic standpoint, right? Like, with the way we built our homes, but even, we used to have a lot more porches, right? So that would encourage,
Mm-hmm.
like where you are, right? In a
Mm-hmm.
gazebo kind of thing. I mean, that would encourage people not only be outside, but to then have that community
Mm-hmm.
interaction,
Yeah.
and once we got rid of porches, now that also, I read an article a couple years ago, but it was, talked about the psychology of policing and how,
Mm-hmm.
we used to have these, kind of unintimidating cop cars, right? Like
Yeah.
Chryslers and stuff like that, and then people would have their patios. So when the cop would come to the patio, they'd have they would just talk, and it would be a community thing. But now we have these houses that are singular units closed off. Right now we have
Mm-hmm.
these huge cars,
Mm-hmm.
fortresses closed off.
Yeah.
Each one has its lights. So yeah, it's created this division in our society that has these ripple effects.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah, the postpartum time is one that is especially isolating for families who are not living multi-generationally anymore. And a lot of women go through severe isolation. And that's one of the big things that I always teach are social cues are circadian cues, and that having the structure and to be visiting with people and talking with competent adults during the day is a huge part of what actually activates our circadian rhythm, helps us know that it's daytime, helps us feel safe so that we can settle at night. And then when that doesn't happen, um, there's a big, big consequences. And then that, kind of sets the stage for, children. Then they start getting older and they just kind of are growing up with this, from this baseline of the social structure that our physiology is expecting just isn't there right now because of how fast culture has changed and how much the idea of the individual and the individual unit. Because like maybe for us, we kind of were more like in the era of suburbs growing, so we would have the individual houses but still in a community. But I'm seeing a lot of places like in my local area, there's a huge development going in that are single unit homes. So not even like for a family or a couple to live in, but for just one individual, like practically a college dorm room. But that's what they're saying that these people are going to live in for the rest of their lives. Like they're just
Wow.
single, individual units, which is just, further of this isolating factor where we don't have the social push and pull as much for, tethering the anchor and anchoring the circadian rhythm, which has drastic interplays with all of health, and especially mental health being one of the first that starts showing symptoms under this kind of stress.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I mean, it reflects also in how we have become so individual in terms of even things like shopping, right?
Yeah.
Online, you're in your
Mm-hmm.
home by yourself,
Oh, right.
placing the order, right? Where it used to
Mm-hmm.
be you went out onto your main street, your high street, as they call it in England.
Mm-hmm.
You had your butcher, baker, candlestick maker. You had
Yeah.
everything, and you were interacting with people, and people knew
Mm-hmm.
you and what you liked. And now you just have algorithms doing that for you. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's so many shifts that have happened. It's been this insane domino effect.
Yeah.
Um, in so many aspects. When you start drilling down and go down that rabbit hole, it's going, wow.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, lots of little changes
yeah.
that we can make though. Like it's
Yeah.
so much that, there's so many things that we can do. So look at like there's all of this pressure making it so difficult, but like these little simple things like stepping outside for a few minutes in the morning, that can really just make a huge difference. Once you start to feel a little bit better, you have more clarity, like I did, and many people who start, shifting their light environment find they suddenly have the mental space to realize I'm not in the right job.
Mm.
Or,
Mhm. Mhm.
wait, I want more friends. I'm going to go out and I'm going to, join something. I'm going to go out and do, like there, when that bandwidth opens up because you're no longer like waking up with gritty eyes and a headache every day. Um, then it's not just like, oh, like chase to the, morning coffee, straight to work, like after work,
Mhm.
home to just veg in front of the TV because I'm so tired, right? There's so many people who like just have this cycle, or their way of socializing is very, disrupting. Like, I think maybe not going to the movies as much anymore, but there's still very much like the active nightlife scene, which again, it's natural for humans to want to congregate at night. We've always been social at night. It's not like you have to just, a lot of us will, especially, moms will like, yeah, we need to be in bed by 8:30, 9 o'clock because we know we're going to be disrupted in the night. But for young people to be able to go out, it used to be gathering around the fire and there would still be loud music. There would still be
It's true.
dancing,
Yeah.
right? All of these things. But now it's like the
Yeah.
LEDs. And so the lighting
True.
signal is different than what it was. It's not that there's a problem with going out and dancing all night. That's
Right.
great.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But like, what are the lights? What are the lasers and LEDs? Like, could those be programmed in such a way that we could still have the natural human urge to get together and celebrate, but just have it not be tanking? Like, a lot of what people think of a hangover isn't necessarily even from the alcohol that they're drinking.
Mm.
Some of it is, obviously, but I discovered this when I became a mom, and I was no longer having any drinks at all, but just the sleep disruption alone. And I would wake up and I would still have a hangover. I was like, I was so mad when it first happened because I was like, what? I didn't even have a sip of anything. And I still feel exactly the same way. Maybe that hangover wasn't actually from, having too much wine or anything, but was actually just from, my sleep not being right. And from the lights making the cortisol flow when it should be melatonin.
So, yeah, speaking of hormones, what are your views on things like hormone replacement therapy or bioidentical hormones and
Oh, mm-hmm.
progesterone? A lot of
Right.
women will struggle
Mhm.
with that.
Especially
Mm-hmm.
as we fluctuate all the time, but I'm in
Yeah.
my stage of life where I'm in perimenopause, and that's something that, I've certainly noticed for
Yeah.
myself. So yeah, it'd be great to get
Mm-hmm.
your input.
Sure, absolutely. So there, ideally we would be having a natural, um, there is, so menopause tends to hit, let's see, I'm going to start I'm just going to give you like an overview of the flow of melatonin across the lifespan. We could do this with all kinds of hormones, but melatonin with regard to the circadian rhythm is like the baseline. If you start understanding melatonin, you kind of can understand what's happening with everything else. Um, so melatonin secretion is negligible at birth. Across the first few months of life, it starts to pick up, and eventually babies start producing their own melatonin. In that interim, they're usually getting it from their moms. That's where a lot of us were raised, where we weren't breastfed in childhood. So the beginning, our circadian rhythm actually didn't stabilize as quickly as it should have. So a lot of us have been experiencing circadian disruption from the time we were in utero through early childhood, which is when circadian rhythms are really programmed. Circadian rhythms conduct the endocrine system. So we know if melatonin should be flowing at night, the circadian melatonin. And then it's counterplayed by in the morning, cortisol should rise. Cortisol is not a bad thing. It's just overdone in the current era. With cortisol is also all of the other sex hormones. So we always think about like the hormones, but we don't think about they're supposed to be released in the morning and early afternoon. There's a surge at wake up. So if we're not waking the circadian rhythm up properly, then that surge of hormones isn't happening properly. So melatonin climbs and climbs and climbs in childhood. And then puberty hits when melatonin peaks and starts to decline in terms of the total amount of circadian melatonin. And it declines across the lifespan. And when it goes below a certain threshold is when menopause tends to happen. And then when melatonin becomes negligible again in old age is when we start to see like senility and dementia kick in. So we have this curve of like it goes up really high, and then it's like all of us who are adults are in the long, slow decline of melatonin.
Wow.
And that is when, and so that's also like all of the other sex hormones are like playing counterpoint. Melatonin is actually considered a sex hormone, that most people don't think of it. So it's conducting the night symphony and should be giving over in the daytime symphony. But in the cases of melatonin being disrupted by artificial light and all of these other signals that are confusing the circadian rhythm, it also has the consequences. And then the lack of daylight really like with the daytime, right? So we have the nighttime that is disrupted. We also have the daytime not getting enough of the daylight. So morning sunlight in the very early morning is very important. And then that UVA sunlight also transforms tons of hormones. You hear about this vitamin D deficiency epidemic. Vitamin D comes from cortisol, that's not cortisol, from cholesterol that is activated by sunlight. So we have like, oh, high cholesterol,
Yeah.
low vitamin D, low vitamin D.
Mhm.
And like when you're looking
Skin
at like,
cancer. Oh my God.
sunlight is supposed to activate that cholesterol and turn it into vitamin D. So like, there's a lot of things. So when it comes to replacing the hormones, if you replace them, it's not really respecting what the body is, it's not getting at what is happening with the underlying biology about why those hormones are lower than they should be at an earlier age than they should be. So there's a lot of women who correct for their circadian rhythms and start getting tons more daylight, and then they leave perimenopause and reverse and go back to normal cycling through, and then have their menopause at the normal age that they do. So, and then a lot of women who are doing that in order to then, restore their fertility, who wanted to have children, take their biological age back through adequate sleep and circadian health. Not that it's always possible, but there are a lot of women who do that. And then even if not, to get their symptoms like under control, because a lot of the symptoms are likewise with, circadian disruption. So they're also starting to research supplemental melatonin, which again, when you look at melatonin, I'm like, so far we've just been talking about circadian melatonin, but there's also cellular melatonin, which is activated by infrared light in the mitochondria. And then there's also dietary melatonin. And then there's also melatonin coming from the microbiome. So there's a lot that we can do to restore like the balance of forces, because melatonin is a major antioxidant. So a lot of the stress of all of that, and I haven't been through menopause yet, so I don't know like from myself, but I have worked with clients through it and read a lot of studies about it. And melatonin is a great anchor to work with through that stage of life, because you're shifting from, a lot of us have like the calcified pineal gland from having had fluoridated water and dental treatments our whole lives. Like it calcifies the pineal gland, and that's part of what drives the lack of pineal melatonin in the circadian rhythm. And that's where you need to kind of shift more into the cellular melatonin, because that isn't going to be as impacted by that calcification. There's a lot that we could go there.
Yeah.
So did I answer your question? And do you have any? The last little piece that I always like to put about it with regard to hormone replacement therapy, because it's also happening with children in puberty. A lot of girls are coming in and their cycle is being very painful. They have PCOS symptoms or on the way to endometriosis, because that also begins in the womb with circadian disruption and other factors. So they're getting straight onto birth control. So birth control and hormone replacement therapy and puberty treatments that they're doing, all of that is ending up in the waterways and causing massive environmental pollution. So I'm like, it may help the individual, but I'm like, on a global scale, it's then going into the waterways, which is polluting the wildlife, and then also like being reuptake into like municipal water systems. So it's kind of something that I don't see as a sustainable long-term solution collectively there. And that's something I don't very often see brought up in terms of that conversation. It's always an individual conversation. Is this right for you? So those are some of the things that I think about with regard to that topic, which is, we could do a whole episode about it.
Absolutely. But I mean, it's so encouraging that you have had success, and for women to hear who are listening that you don't have to jump to, hormone replacement therapy, even if it's bioavailable or whatnot, and there's that, of course, controversy with that, and that's a whole different topic, but that so much can be changed again by getting back to those basics of addressing the circadian rhythm, the darkness, the light. I mean, and it makes total sense to us, of course, and then those who end up learning about it, because again, it is a complete disruption from how our ancestors lived for thousands and thousands of years in a very short amount of time. Yes, we're
Yeah.
adaptable, but my goodness, I mean, on the scale, it's such bombardment.
Hmm.
So it's no wonder that, and of course it's happened for enough generations that we're like at a loss. We don't know, why is this all happening? Why
Hmm.
are all these, chronic conditions popping up? And I used to be one of those who said, "Oh, because we just didn't know enough about it, or we just didn't recognize it," which I think is total BS, because we're just not looking at all the other factors that have influenced us. I mean, how could we possibly think that we could function as our predecessors did in a healthy
Hmm.
way?
And I think a lot of it has a root again in fear. And
Hmm.
it's interesting that, melatonin, mela is darkness in Greek.
Hmm.
So, we, we're born in this hospital, right? And we're born in this shelter, right? Of our, secure shelter that we perceive to be secure in our homes, away
Hmm.
from the elements that used to destroy us. But we forgot
Hmm.
how those elements used to build us, right? The fire, the
Hmm.
wind, the cold, the
Yeah.
heat, and
Hmm.
everybody's so scared of that now. I mean, not a lot of our subscribers are, they're brave individuals, but
Yeah.
yeah, so that fear, right, it
Mhm.
made us forget what we used to love. And that's why what you do is so powerful, because you help people tap into that darkness and use it as a tool.
Mhm.
So I think that's wonderful.
And the other side of the fear, of course, is what's been instilled in us with, unfortunately, Western medical practices that, well, if you don't take this pill, your
Yeah.
heart's going to go on you, your cholesterol's going to kill you, you're this, that, the other, right?
Hmm.
Instead, again, how is it possible just changing my light is going to make me healthy? I mean, that's just crazy. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
only yeah, but the many, many, many of us who have experienced it, once we do, then you ask a really common question that we always get on these podcasts, myself and then also my colleagues, and my work at the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology, where we're certifying practitioners to work in this, and then they go out there and it's like, what are your non-negotiable one of your non-negotiables? And it's like blocking artificial light at night and seeing sunlight in the morning.
absolutely.
Pretty much universally, like there's all kinds of other things that add to that, but those light anchors are just so powerful because it gives the body a reference point to work off of, so that it knows when to run daytime processes and when to run nighttime processes. Because without that, we end up in this just kind of wired but tired cycle where our body is never fully activated, neither is it all the way shut down. So it's just always kind of operating in this like kind of flat gray zone where it's not having the peaks nor the valleys. It's just like this stable, steady thing, which I think we kind of live in a time that values austerity as like an ideal. So we tend to believe that if something feels good, it's bad for us. And
Mhm.
so they feel like when they go out and they feel like the sun feeling so good on them, but they're like, oh, this is like candy. It's bad for me. I should have sunscreen. I should, get out of, all of like that is like one of the things. And
Yeah.
same thing with like, going to bed early or sleeping in, like those things, they feel like candy, like it feels really good. So it must be bad for me. I need to be like,
Mm.
up with the sun and charging into my day. Or, there's
Yeah.
all
Well,
these,
that's like,
we whip ourselves.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of religious implications, I believe, of, if you want to believe that you're a fallen sinner all the time and you say that, your subconscious hears that. Now, am I saying humanity is perfect? No. But, there's a lot of programming that may or may not need to be addressed also at the
Hmm.
core
Yeah.
of these beliefs that we are inherently evil, or, that we are undeserving. And that all
Mm.
boils down to valuing ourselves, right? And that's
Hmm.
where the true journey begins.
Hmm.
So I want to ask you, Nikko, too, like how do you help people? Like if somebody comes to you, what's your common, somebody who comes to you with help, or is it somebody who's having a baby, or, I mean, who do you
Hmm.
help, and how do you help them?
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, great. I love that question because it's Sometimes I like to, when I think about all of the things that I do, the word that most comes to mind is kaleidoscopic, because it tends to change over time. And I have a lot of people who come into my sphere that we will begin in one area, and then the relationship will end up morphing and evolving over time. And I have a lot of long time collaborations of people who, began as them, my client, or me learning from them. And then over time, we end up in like a partnership or collaboration, or, just like, friendship. Like it's a very, I have a very like social approach to business, and it's not necessarily a linear process. I do have linear things that people can go through, like, if they, preconception work or pregnancy support through that, making birth plans, all of that. I have plenty of people who come to me for support with their, sometimes they have symptoms that they want to get rid of, and I can offer different ideas of how they could overcome those using light-based modalities. I also do a lot of, work with practitioners, and a lot of people who come to me are maybe first coming to me for fertility support, but they're also a practitioner. And then we realize that there's a lot of work that their field could benefit from this, right? Like someone who works in gut, and then realizing that, they've been spending, long time. One of the students that came through the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology last year that I supported, she had been doing GAPS diet with people. GAPS is a very intensive, restrictive diet for a time to heal the gut lining. And she's like, the regeneration of the gut lining is mediated by the circadian rhythm. So we're using this really powerful dietary lever without looking at how light and sleep and meal timing and all of this are influencing the body's even ability to repair the gut lining.
Right.
So we have, and so same thing with, healing chronic pain. We get a lot of body workers coming through the Institute. So I do individual mentorship with practitioners, but I also work with practitioners, and I'll send them through the training so that they can get certified. And then this year, I'm really excited that we're beginning to support those practitioners who are working in these ways to collect data and get ready to publish their results, because they're getting phenomenal results with their clients. A lot of them are starting to develop their own protocols at the intersection of quantum biology and whatever their main field is. So whether they're a surgeon and looking at the healing protocols that happen leading up to and after surgery, right? If they're working with athletes, right? Working on that intense optimization, like we know that athletes tend to have more stress fractures in the winter. Is there a way we could avoid that? Right? They have questions based on where the light and all of these things fit with the work that they do. So I'm supporting them in actually figuring out how to collect that data and be able to share it so that they can transform the field, because everyone who's dealing with any kind of health and wellness has the potential to integrate light-based biology into the work they do, and really get just amazing results, because we're, very close. A lot of medicine is, like you said, Western medicine, not all of it is like exactly perfect. And a lot of it with like the research that's used to validate their claims about what the best thing to do is done on circadian disrupted populations. So like what's the trajectory for someone who actually does have the adequate light signals and darkness signals there? So it's really an exciting like frontier moment where all of this is kind of like bubbling up, and we're all becoming part of a change. So whether you're using it for yourself in healing, or starting to integrate it in the work that you do, I'm here as a hub and resource and connector. So I send referrals, I do trainings, I do one-to-one work. My Substack is a wealth of information. You're welcome to do that. I teach classes almost every month for the members inside of it. So yeah, I'm very, very available, and also, end up doing custom things where someone comes and like, hey, you seem like this. And then we're like, okay, let's have a call about that and figure it out. Like I'm one of those people who's very available. So I don't exactly have like just a bunch of like codified programs. I think that those are great. It's very straightforward. But with me, it's a little bit, tends to be more customized and personal.
Which is wonderful, because we are all individuals, all have individual histories we're dealing with, and health issues, and environments. So that's the best way to go. Absolutely.
And I love the social approach too, and that's how I try and we try to approach people, you know, it's that golden rule, I believe, of treating somebody as you would want to be treated. So, I like to treat people as a human being, right? Looking at them
Hmm.
holistically from everything, and, from emotions religious beliefs, and, and it all comes together. But
Hmm.
yeah, so I love that, open approach. Um, yeah,
And
yeah,
I think I think you touched on it earlier, perhaps, but if you could let us know, because we will be releasing this soon. So
Mhm.
Hmm.
before,
Great.
at the end of the month, you have something
Hmm.
coming up. If you,
That's right. Yeah. So we have a new cohort for anyone who's a practitioner who wants to become certified in applied quantum biology, which is the intersection of light, magnetism, hydration, circadian rhythms, heliotherapy. It's very evidence based. We have an extensive bibliography. I created bibliographies by hand for every single module. So when you go in, it's just a whole bunch. There's so much science behind it to be able to back up the claims, and then so much support for integrating like whatever modality, whether you're a doctor or a health coach. You're welcome to come in. We also get a lot of like interior designers and lighting architects and that kind of person coming in who are building out environment. Like we want the environment to be supportive of human circadian rhythms. So the certification we enroll every season. So this is winter 2026. We'll also have a cohort coming in spring. So yeah, that we would love that. That's www.iaqb.foundation. And that's where you can sign up to get on the wait list or watch an info session, learn more about it. So that's coming up. I have a research pilot coming up also that will be in February. So if you're interested in that, you can email me Nikko, Nikko, at iaqb.foundation. So those are the practitioner offers. And then I do have availability right now. I don't always. Sometimes there'll be a wait list, but other times it will be available to work with me one-to-one for support. And that's on my website, nikkokennedy.com. And then my Substack, you can just find anytime. So if you're just like, I just want to learn more and I'm not really sure where I fit yet, then just go to Brighter Days, Darker Nights, sign up, put your email in. It's totally free. It's easy to unsubscribe if you didn't want to, or you can upgrade and come in and come into the live classes with me. The sleep workshop is coming up this month as well. So there's, yeah, lots of things going on. And then it's just constantly evolving. So there will be even more things in the future. I really look forward to connecting with anyone who's interested in this because we have a really big mission. The IAQB is a nonprofit and we're working so that globally around the world, everyone has at least one practitioner that they have access to that understands light through the quantum biologic lens. So
Wow.
it's a
Oh, that's
big
amazing.
picture. Yeah, big picture goal
Yeah.
here.
Wow. Yeah, and what you're doing is and what we're all doing here, our subscribers, what we're co-creating, is so important because there's so many people who don't know, they have no idea about any of this stuff. Even here in Arizona, it's very health conscious, but a lot of people have no idea about computer glasses, what they, blue light's
Mm-hmm.
bad for them. Athletes are building out these stadiums with LED lights. They have no idea about not that they don't want to know, but they just don't know, right? So yeah, what you're doing is so powerful. So yeah, we look forward to sharing everything you're offering. We're going to link it all in our show notes, of course, and we encourage you. Yeah, please, if you have any questions, get in touch with Nikko. She's connected to a network of like-minded and light-minded individuals, and yeah, I really applaud you for what you're doing. It's fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a wonderful time talking with you. You had such wonderful questions. And yeah, I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And so I'm really looking forward. I'll also be sharing this around. So for those who are here listening because of me and maybe aren't familiar with you, would you share a little bit about what you do for them? And then we can wrap. Yeah.
Fantastic.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
would you
Yeah.
like to go into what we do? So for
Oh, yeah,
those
yeah, yeah.
listeners,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know you
I'm so
have a
used
lot
to
of
being in
people.
interviewer mode that I'm like,
I know. I'm like,
I'm the
I'm
one
gonna
ask the
turn it around
questions.
real quick. Let's hear a little bit because
Yeah.
I've been following your work for a while and love to like share what you're doing. You know, sometimes I'll grab a snippet and reshare it on Substack notes or whatever. But you do a lot of
wonderful.
really cool work. You have the uh, power on, power off.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, just a quick background, Bodana and I were two very different people than who we were 10 years ago. We got married when we went on our honeymoon, and well, Bodana had basically you crashed from a withdrawal from SSRIs,
Oh
and
yeah.
and the only way really we were able to repair that ultimately after trying to wean off psychotropic drugs was with circadian rhythm. I
Oh,
sold
beautiful.
technology and computers for a long time. I became screen addicted and burnt out and depressed and needed to figure my life out. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, so Bodana really catapulted that interest and that passion I've always had. And yeah, so we write on Substack. I make very complex topics simple. I make
Yes, you
EMF
do.
so simple a
Hmm.
child can understand it, I believe. And yeah, then we do a podcast together, the Power Couple podcast. And we also have courses on how to remediate EMF,
Good.
coaching on EMF, focusing a lot on improving people's invisible light environment as well as
Mhm.
visible.
So important.
And yeah, guiding them how to reduce electronics, discover certain hidden EMF they don't even know about, and all these gadgets that are scattered throughout their house.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so we're doing that. Um, and we may or may not have a retreat this year. We're toying with the
Looking
idea of
into
doing
it.
like a digital
Ooh,
detox.
cool.
So
Yeah.
if you're interested in learning about that, please subscribe. We'll be sending out updates on that as well. It'd be here in Arizona, and
Yep.
yeah, we're just we're looking forward to this year. We know it's going to be a year of quantum changes and a
It
fast
is.
fast moving year. So yeah, we really again. Like you, Nico, we just encourage people to connect with us. You never know where things are going to go. You can always subscribe to our Substack and email us, and we're happy to chat.
Yeah, wonderful. Awesome. Yeah, I love following your work because you do such a good job of breaking it down and taking on those subjects that sometimes people are a little bit afraid of, like EMFs. It could be kind of scary. So I love your approach, just making it so, so much more simple. And then, breaking down to what do we actually do about all this? Because it's not just all doom and gloom. There's so much that can be
Right.
done. So yeah, this was very aligned. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, we're very, very happy to have you today and for you taking the time again. Great, great conversation. Thank you so much.
And thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next time.